AP European History video on Mussolini El Duce.
Perfect. All right, Brody. Okay, so here we go. Some of this we did last week Friday. If nothing else, it's just a good review. We'll get some stuff done here. So Mussolini came to power in the early 20s. He came to power in Italy when the King Victor Emmanuel III was just trying to hang on for power. There were prime ministers. I don't even know their names because it doesn't matter. All right? Democracy was being threatened. There were socialists who wanted power. There were anarchists who wanted power. World War I killed a whole bunch of Italians, and the Treaty of Versailles got them nothing out of it. So there's a whole bunch of chaos. Democracy's under threat, and that's where Mussolini comes to power. First, the socialists are popular before the war. And that's kind of funny because Mussolini was a die-hard committed socialist who after the war becomes anti-socialist. Mussolini before World War I hated war. He joins the war and then he turns it into the most important thing in his life. He goes from a pacifist to a pro-war nationalist kind of guy. So Mussolini will be, as we talked about before, asked or chosen by Victor Emmanuel III to be prime minister. He marches on Rome anyways to take over because he wants to be a part of this revolution and makes him much more powerful. Or so he thinks, or so he says. So Mussolini becomes the prime minister. I want to say it was 23, it might be 22, doesn't really matter. It's early 20s. This is what he does. All right? This is all about consolidating power. This is about Mussolini making himself the dictator, making himself the only guy in charge. So he comes to power legally. He's legally appointed by the king, who's allowed to do that, and he's going to get rid of his competition. He's going to make it so only the fascist party is in charge, and if only the fascist party is in charge, as being the leader of the fascist party, he's the only guy in charge. All right? So the first thing he does is the two-thirds law. This is a law where whoever gets the most votes in the Italian parliament gets two-thirds of the seats. And as soon as you have two-thirds of the seats, you can pass any law you want. One of the first laws they pass is a law where there's only one party, that's the fascist party, and if you only have one party, you don't really need a parliament, and so he becomes a dictator. He will murder his opposition. Mattiatti is a socialist, a very popular socialist that Mussolini has murdered because he is one guy people might have wanted to run the show instead of him. But it's not all bad. Let's actually do a little bit more bad here first. For women, this is bad. He is going to undo any rights that they might have. He's going to create a patriarchal or man-dominated society. He will make it impossible for women to divorce their husbands. He will make it illegal to do that. He will actually pass a bachelor's tax. Men in their mid to late 20s that aren't married have to pay higher taxes. So if you're not married and you're not getting your wife pregnant, you pay more in taxes because he wanted more people for, you needed people to do all the things he wanted done. Now, a lot of men complain, well, I want to have many women. I don't want to have one. I don't want to settle down. Mussolini would come back and say, you don't have to settle down. You get married, you get your wife pregnant, then you can sleep with whoever you want. So I'm not telling you to be, sleep with only one person. Just get a woman pregnant. We're not going to have kids out of wedlock, so that's why you're going to get married. All right, Abyssinia is also a bad thing. Abyssinia we would call Ethiopia. And this is Mussolini's big conquest, his big expansion, his big taking over the world. He is going to invade Ethiopia in the 20s, I think 26. He will go use poison gas on them. He will have thousands of them killed. He will take over to connect Eritrea to Somalia. Ethiopia was a little chunk of land in between that hadn't been conquered during the scramble for Africa. He takes it over and he makes it part of his empire. It's brutal. The poison gas part is brutal. They hadn't done that. It had been outlawed after World War I. He still does it. Just shows the kind of brutal guy he was. This you could also call negative, but it's kind of interesting because he really wasn't a die-hard anti-Semitic. He never really promoted it. He never really passed laws about it. He didn't do a whole heck of a lot with it. Then all of a sudden, push comes to shove, and Hitler says, I want to get rid of the Jews, and Mussolini says, so do I. Most of the Italians didn't even know that he felt that way. He probably didn't. He just did it because Hitler pressured him. So he definitely would be labeled an anti-Semitic. He would definitely be labeled as bad for the Jews. I don't want to say he wasn't, but he wasn't as strongly anti-Semitic as Hitler. That leaves one thing on the side here, which is actually a positive. This is him being really, really smart. This is him making a deal with the Catholic Church. So Lateran is the Catholics. And it's going to be where The Catholics get money from the government. He's going to take tax money to pay local priests. This is when the Catholic Church doesn't have a lot of money. So by paying the local priests, by supporting them, he makes all the Catholics in Italy happy, which is obviously all or almost all the population. This agreement is also why we have an independent Vatican City. This is why we have this 1 mile by 1 mile independent nation right in the middle of Rome. Because Mussolini gave them money, Mussolini made it so they could be self-sufficient or sufficient with government money, and ever since then they've been making more and more money, and now they're a pretty powerful, it's a pretty powerful little country within Rome. So this is a very, very smart move on Mussolini's part, making the Catholic Church happy, because as I've already said, the Catholic Church is a huge part of Italy.
The world Mussolini created.
All right, thank you, Ella. Good job. If you look at these pictures, this is called the EUR. These two are the same picture. All right. It was supposed to be a world exhibition. You should remember the Crystal Palace. That's what it was, the Crystal Palace of 1852, England, where they built this building to show off how awesome they were industrially speaking. This is Mussolini's building to house his supposed to be 1942 exhibition, to show off world exhibition, to show how awesome Italy was. Well, that never happened. It's now office space and a radio broadcasting center. At least it was when I was there 20 years ago. But the architecture is the important part. Kind of simple, kind of plain, lots of arches. Very Roman. That's what I want you to see, very Roman. This is the Milan train station. If you Google it and look more closely at the images, very Roman, very Renaissance-y, which is replicating Roman. So it's very Roman. It is exactly what he wants to do. He wants to associate himself with ancient Rome. So this is Renaissance or Roman art, ancient Roman architecture, used to promote him as the next Julius Caesar. All right? This is just kind of cool. All right, this is kind of cool. I should probably save this to the end. Let's do that. Let's carry on with the architecture part. Maybe we'll go back to that. This is a normal Roman street. Very narrow, very tight picture I took. This is a Mussolini 1920s, 1930s era street. Much wider. If you go to this street, on the left is going to be ancient Roman ruins, like Trajan's Market, a whole bunch of famous Roman things. On this side over here, right behind me, would be the Forum and a whole bunch of other very famous ancient Roman ruins. So he paves over a whole bunch of these ruins to create this road, which leads right here, right behind me, right over there, would be where Mussolini's speaking. And if you can look right down the middle, in the center of the picture, I don't know if you can see it or not, you see the
Colosseum.
Exactly right, the ancient Roman Colosseum. So the thought was, Mussolini is going to have victory parades. He's going to have soldiers and tanks and troop carriers and all this famous world conquest parades right down the street. If I'm standing over here, I got Mussolini off on my left, I got ancient Roman ruins behind me, and I got the Colosseum to my right. Same deal over here. Colosseum to the left, ancient Rome behind me, Mussolini to the right. I look, I watch, I see, I look, I watch, I see, I look, I watch, I see, and I get morphed into this world of the awesome Mussolini, the next Julius Caesar. That's what he's trying to do. He went as far as to use ancient Roman symbols. This is something you would see all over ancient Rome. So this guy here would be walking with this guy here as his escort. He would be a judge. He would be a judge going to some town, showing up to do his judging, only his law, and this guy would let everyone know this is the judge, it's a symbol of justice and freedom. Mussolini used it for his lapel, up on your jacket pins, symbols all over. The cool part is, it's the same symbol that's on the back of our dimes in the 1930s. So you look at this and say, oh, this is what I would do if we would have class. I would try to sell it as fascism. We're fascists. Look how fascist we are because we're taking a fascist symbol. Well, that's not true. We took the symbol of liberty and justice or justice, not liberty, and he took the symbol of justice and he did bad things with it. We put it on our dime. So I actually collect dimes from the 1930s that had this on there because they actually have some real silver in there. And if we had class, I would show you one. It doesn't really matter. So we now don't do that because this symbol has been ruined by Mussolini. All right? So that takes us to one more just kind of cool thing about Mussolini. This is, as you can see, the Olympic Stadium. He was supposed to have the 1944 Summer Olympics. So he builds all this stuff just like everyone does. Never has the Olympics because of the war, obviously. So they keep this stuff up there. So in 1960, they're going to host the Olympics. Pretty good Olympics, kind of an interesting Olympics. This stadium, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe is still used by the big Roma team from their highest Serial A soccer league. The cool part is not this. You can see it's right on the outskirts of the city. Trains or buses drop you off. You walk in here, you get to the stadium. Whatever. This is the cool part. These are celebrations of Mussolini. These things are built by him during his era to make him look great. And the cool part, I will come back over there so you can hear me. The cool part is in 1960, long after Mussolini's dead and this terrible guy's gotten rid of, these things still existed. If you walked in this walkway to the stadium in 1960 for the Olympics, 266 times Mussolini or celebration of Mussolini was etched into these stones, into these pavers. And this obelisk is dedicated to him and his greatness. So you're heading into the 1960 Olympics, you see this all over the place, and you see this obelisk all celebrating one of the worst people in world history. And they just hadn't gotten rid of. Now they're gone, but it was just kind of interesting that they still existed in 1960. All right? So this is Mussolini. There's another Stalin video. We'll do Hitler together in class. I don't want to put that up on YouTube. And then we'll be ready for World War II. All right, I hope this works. I hope this helps.
Bye-bye.